Hello guys, welcome to the Sleepy Science, where your questions don't just get answers, they become quiet journeys into the deepest edges of possibility. Tonight we're not drifting into stars or galaxies, we're staying right here, on Earth. But something feels off, something's missing, the ground beneath your feet isn't moving, the sky has frozen, the air has gone still. For the first time in 4.5 billion years, Earth has stopped spinning. This isn't science fiction. It's slow physics, real consequences, and it all begins the very moment motion dies. What happens to the oceans when momentum disappears? What happens to the air, the light, your sense of time? Your heartbeat. You won't hear explosions, but you'll feel silence differently, because when Earth stops turning, gravity doesn't, and neither does the sky. So if your eyes begin to close as we move forward, let them. But if your mind wants to stay awake a little longer, just to understand how stillness changes everything, I'll be right here. Tap like if this moment feels calm. Subscribe for more truths in soft motion. Share your moment with me. Where in the world are you watching the stillness begin? Now. Let's drift gently into a world where the Earth forgets how to move. It begins with a feeling, a silence deeper than silence. You wake from your sleep and something is missing. Not a sound, not a sight, but a sensation. You listen for the whisper of leaves brushing one another outside your window, the soft gusts of wind weaving through tree limbs, the ever-present hush of movement. But it never comes. The sky is there, soft and pale and wide, but it doesn't change. The sun doesn't shift. Shadows don't crawl along the floor. Everything feels held, not frozen, but paused. You rise. The floor feels heavier than usual. Just slightly, as if your body has gained an invisible weight overnight. But gravity hasn't changed, not in the usual way. What's changed is motion, the deep ancient motion beneath your feet, the rotation of the Earth that has always carried you gently, without your knowing. That motion has stopped. There is no roar, no trembling, no collapse. The Earth does not split apart. It simply becomes still. The most constant spin you've never felt, one that once turned the planet eastward at over 1,600 kilometers per hour at the equator, has vanished into quiet. You step outside into a world that should be turning, but isn't. The sky holds the sun in one position, unmoving, unwavering. The shadows lie long or short, depending on where you are, but they remain precisely where they were an hour ago. There is no arc across the sky, no sense of time unfolding. Time, you begin to realize, has not stopped, but it has become untethered from the sun. You walk through the stillness. The air feels heavy, as though the wind has been drained from it. It clings rather than brushes, dense and unmoving. Without Earth's rotation, the Coriolis force, the invisible deflection that once bent wind into graceful arcs and spirals, is gone. You can't see this change with your eyes, but your lungs know it. Your skin feels it. The air has no direction anymore. You pass a tree that once swayed with every breeze. Its leaves are still. The birds are quiet, confused, as if their morning cues have failed them. Even insects seem to pause. You begin to understand that everything, every system, every instinct, every living thing once relied on the rhythm of Earth's spin. The ground beneath you feels solid, but not familiar. Before, the Earth's rotation slightly reduced the pull of gravity at the equator, creating a feeling just a hair lighter than true weight. Without that spin, that faint outward force disappears, and gravity holds you closer. You wouldn't have noticed it yesterday. Today, every step seems to echo more firmly beneath your feet. You are slightly heavier, not by much, but enough that your body registers it in subtle ways. A deeper ache in your legs, a firmer press of your feet into the soil. Far above, satellites begin to drift. Their orbits were designed with Earth's spin in mind. Without the planet turning, many can no longer keep pace. Some start to tumble out of their predictable paths. Communications grow patchy. Navigation becomes uncertain. The tools we sent skyward now search for anchors that no longer exist. And yet life continues, slowly, confusedly, but it continues. You walk through a town where people step outside and stare at the sky, waiting for the sun to move. Some wear sunglasses on a side of the planet where it is now always day. Others light candles where night will never lift. The world has been divided in two, not by continents, but by light and shadow. On one side, an eternal day begins to heat the land without relief. On the other, night deepens into endless cold. You sit down on the edge of a dry field, trying to feel something, some proof of motion, but there is none. The wind does not come. The clouds, if any are left, do not drift. The earth, in all its weight and mass, has paused like a breath held too long. You imagine how ancient people might have interpreted this moment: a stopped sun, a still moon, an unmoving sky. Would they think the gods had silenced time? That the heavens were holding their breath in grief or awe? You know, the truth is mechanical, scientific. But truth feels small beside the enormity of the silence. The ocean is nearby, but its waves are irregular. Without Earth's rotation, to pull water outward at the equator, seas begin to reshape themselves. The moon still tugs on them, but in strange, exaggerated ways. The tides swell higher on one side of the planet. On others, they barely reach the shore. A new imbalance has begun. But you don't yet understand how much of the Earth's balance relied on its turning. And still, the silence stretches. You walk into a forest where branches do not sway, where the air is thick and unmoving. It feels like stepping into a painting. Nothing drifts, no breeze ruffles your hair. You pause beside a fallen log and notice a beetle slowly crawling, as if unsure of which way is up. Even the insects seem hesitant. The days before this moment feel like a dream. A world that moved without asking permission, that spun you through day and night, sunrise and moonset, without your ever needing to notice. Now, all of that motion has been taken away, and in its absence, the world becomes visible. Not louder, not brighter, but revealed. You notice the texture of stillness, the quiet between sounds, the way your own breath becomes a kind of ticking clock. You wait for change, but there is none. The spin is gone, and with it, the automatic flow of time, weather, and rhythm. But something deep inside you remembers the motion. Your body, like all bodies, has evolved with the spin. Your cells know when day begins and ends. Your brain tracks the light. Your heart follows the cues of rhythm and repetition. Even now it expects the sun to rise or fall. You feel that expectation pressing quietly against your thoughts. And you wonder, not in fear, but in curiosity, what else will shift? If the wind no longer moves, where will the air go? Will storms still be born? Will clouds find their way across the sky? What will happen to flight, to weather, to breath? You look upward toward the unmoving sun. It hangs like a question that has no urgency to be answered. And you breathe deeply, slowly, in a world that is no longer rushing forward. Stillness has come, and in this silence you begin to hear what comes next. What will the wind remember when motion returns? It begins with a quiet ache, not in your chest, but in the air around you. You step outside, and it feels wrong. Not painful, not violent, just unnatural. The wind, which once met you with a whisper, a chill, or a caress, is gone. Not just for a moment. It's not hiding behind a weather front or trapped between valleys. It's absent, like breath held too long, like a song paused mid-note. You stand beneath the unmoving sun. Your skin warms on one side, cools in shadow, but the temperature does not even out with the breeze. The stillness presses into your shoulders. You walk toward the edge of a field, expecting the wind to greet you the way it always has, sweeping the grass into gentle waves, tousling your hair, making your clothes ripple. But nothing stirs. The world holds its breath. Before Earth stopped spinning, its rotation sculpted the wind. You never saw the hand at work, but it was always there. The Coriolis effect, a quiet twist, caused by the turning Earth, bent moving air into beautiful patterns. It gave rise to trade winds, jet streams, cyclones. It shaped the sky's invisible rivers. It was everywhere and nowhere. Now that hand is still, and the air no longer knows how to move. You walk farther. You reach a place where the land dips, where wind once gathered and funneled through the valley like a sigh. Now it is silent. The trees there are unnervingly still, not just calm, inert. The leaves hang like forgotten flags. Not one shifts, not even at their edges. You step into the clearing and feel the heat building on your skin, unchallenged by breeze. Sweat begins to form and lingers there, unwicked, unmoved. High above, the jet streams have lost their guide. These high-altitude winds once encircled the globe in bands, steering storms, dividing climate zones and shaping weather below. Without Earth's spin, these bands begin to unravel. Some slow and sink, others drift unpredictably. Their paths twist, widen and collapse. Planes that once rode their currents now struggle against unstable air, their routes uncertain. You lie in the tall grass, staring up. The sky is blue, untouched, unbothered, but it feels hollow, like a canvas without motion. You try to remember how the breeze used to sound in your ears. It came in rhythms, in soft exclamations, in patterns you never had to understand. Now that it's gone, you realize how deeply it once shaped every moment. Every scent, every whisper, every change in weather began with wind. Without the wind, the world begins to separate into two opposing moods. On the sun-facing side of the earth, heat builds, slowly at first, then insistently. With no rotation to redistribute warmth, the air doesn't circulate across latitudes. The sun bakes the land with no reprieve. Cities grow warmer by the hour. Forests start to dry. The ocean's surface glimmers with heat but stays strangely still. Without wind, the sea's top layer warms but cannot cool. Meanwhile, on the dark side of the planet, the air grows still in another way, not with heat, but with cold. The absence of sunlight and motion allows temperatures to plunge. Frost forms and does not melt. Ice creeps across windows that once greeted morning. Clouds hang in the sky, unmoving, no longer carried forward. In some places, snow falls vertically and never drifts. It simply drops like ash. You walk through a town square where flags do not wave, where wind chimes remain mute, where trees forget how to dance. You watch a paper wrapper on the ground. It does not tumble, does not roll. It lies still, forgotten, as if weightless in a world that has lost its breath. Some winds remain not because of Earth's spin, but because of differences in pressure. Air still responds to heat and cold. It rises where warm, it sinks where chilled. But these movements are local, confused. Small gusts emerge and then fade. Without the Coriolis effect to curve and organize them, they move in jagged lines, forming isolated swirls, eddies that go nowhere. You feel one brush your ankle, then disappear. A wind born and gone in a moment. Storms still try to form, but they are strange now. Without the rotation of Earth to shape their spirals, cyclones collapse inward rather than spin. Hurricanes do not grow in neat, terrifying symmetry. Instead, they fizzle or fester into chaotic blobs of weather. Rain falls in bursts that feel misplaced. Lightning crackles across still skies, unsure of where to go. Thunder rolls in directions that no longer make sense. You think of deserts, how wind once carved dunes into flowing sculptures. Now the sand sits untouched. The surface hardens in the stillness. Without wind to shape it, the landscape begins to lose its curves. Sharpness returns. You picture a future desert not of shifting sands, but of frozen stillness, the sculpture of time without air. You remember beaches, the way salty air once greeted you before you saw the sea. That invisible reach of the ocean, carried inland by breeze. Now, even at the coast, the scent of salt is weak. The air no longer carries the ocean's breath. It sits beside it in quiet separation. The animals notice too. Birds once soared on thermals, invisible columns of warm air rising from the land. Without rotation, those thermals are erratic. Some never rise, others bubble up unpredictably. Birds flap more and glide less. They use energy where once they drifted. Flight becomes tiring, routes grow shorter. You see one falter mid-air and drop into the brush. Insects lose their guidance. Many rely on scent trails carried by wind. Now, those trails linger too long in one place or vanish too soon. Bees wander past flowers. Moths circle lights for hours, disoriented. The breeze that once delivered scent, direction, and warning has vanished. Even human cities begin to notice the absence. Pollution no longer disperses. In places where factories still run, smoke hangs low. It settles into the lungs of the living. The sky grows hazy, not from movement, but from stillness. The lack of wind becomes visible in the air itself, the outlines of breath and exhaust trapped like ghosts. Your own breath feels different, not because you can't breathe, but because the exchange is strange now. The coolness of an inhale is more still. The exhale lingers around you longer than it should. You wave your hand and watch how slowly the air yields. You begin to wonder what your lungs are trying to replace, and whether the wind was ever separate from you at all. You climb a hill at dusk. Not that dusk means anything now. The sun has not moved, but your body remembers the time of day. It feels like the right hour to look outward. From the top, you see a broad landscape, trees, rooftops, rivers, and none of them move. The stillness is overwhelming, but not dead, just different. You stretch out your arms, hoping to feel something, even a whisper of motion, and at last a faint stir brushes your skin, not a breeze but an updraft from the valley below. It carries no direction, no story. It is simply warm air rising, tired and alone. You breathe it in, and you wonder, if the wind has forgotten how to dance, how long before the oceans forget how to move? You walk to the shore before the water arrives. It's quiet, too quiet. The sand beneath your feet is cool, undisturbed. It holds the imprint of nothing but your own steps. The sea is out there. You can hear it, but it sounds different. Not the usual rhythmic roar, not the calming cycle of waves approaching and withdrawing. It sounds confused, as if the ocean doesn't know whether to come in or go out. You sit and wait for the tide. But there is no true tide anymore, at least, not the kind you remember. The earth no longer spins beneath the ocean's skin, and the result is imbalance. The tides, once harmonized by the interplay of moonlight and momentum, now move with a wobble. The moon still orbits, and its gravity still pulls at the sea. But without the Earth's rotation to spread that pull smoothly across the globe, the ocean begins to bulge. Lopsided, strained, uncertain. Where you sit, the water creeps forward, inching in without rhythm. It doesn't lap, it surges, then retreats, then pauses. You close your eyes and listen. There are no waves in the way you once knew them, no rolling percussion, no steady cadence. Instead, there are pulses, sudden rushes of water, followed by eerie stillness. The ocean is breathing wrong. You open your eyes and notice how the coastline has changed. What was once a crescent bay is now wider, stretched by the irregular rise and fall of the sea. The waterline is unpredictable. In some places, the sea has pulled far away. In others, it presses closer to the land, licking at roads, touching trees. The moon's gravity is still doing its job, but without Earth's spin to smooth and scatter the tug, the oceans behave like muscle without a bone to pull against. They clench and release unpredictably. Before, the oceans were in constant motion, not just from tides, but from the Coriolis force, twisting their currents. That gentle nudge helped drive vast, spiraling loops of water across the globe. These gyres, one in the North Atlantic, one in the Pacific, others scattered around, kept warm water moving toward cold places and cold water drifting back toward warmth. It was a grand conveyor belt of balance, delivering life, mixing nutrients, maintaining temperature. Now, without the Coriolis effect, those gyres have begun to fall apart. You picture the Gulf Stream, once a ribbon of warm water stretching from the Gulf of Mexico to Europe's shores. It has weakened, slowed, stalled in places. Without Earth's rotation to maintain its curve, the current loses its path. It pools near coasts or wanders aimlessly. The warmth it once carried gathers in heavy clusters. Where it should cool, it scorches. Where it should flow, it drags like syrup. Farther south, Equatorial waters used to move westward, pushed by trade winds that spun with the turning earth. Those winds are gone, and the waters no longer travel. They sit, heating under the constant sun, baking slowly, with no breeze to churn or lift them. The surface warms, but the layers below remain cold. Without mixing, without motion, the ocean becomes stratified heat above, cold below, and life struggles in the gap. You think of coral reefs, once swaying gently in the pulse of tides. Without water movement, their world grows still. Stagnant, oxygen declines, nutrients don't arrive. Fish pass through confused, no longer guided by the invisible road signs of current and drift. The underwater world becomes quieter, but not calm. Stillness here does not mean peace, it means disconnection. In the polar regions, ice begins to behave strangely. On the sunlit side of the Earth, where daylight is now eternal, glaciers melt without pause. The meltwater doesn't travel as it once did. Without rotation, it does not spiral into currents. Instead, it pulls and sits and spreads in uneven sheets. Sea levels rise in strange places. Some coasts sink underwater, others stay dry. Gravity still guides water downward, but the Earth's rotation once helped balance where down spread out to. Without it, water listens only to the nearest pull. And on the dark side of the world, ice spreads unchecked. The cold deepens without reprieve, and oceans freeze in silence. But without wind, without currents, the surface freezes shallow and brittle, while the deeper water stays trapped and unfrozen. In that cold quiet, you imagine strange creatures drifting below the ice, forgotten by the light, their paths disrupted, their instincts unanchored. You move toward a cliffside overlooking the sea. Below, the water looks like ink thick, unmoving, shadowed. You watch for whitecaps, but there are none. Without wind to stir them, waves don't rise. They only respond to deeper tremors, now submarine landslides, tectonic shivers. Every so often, the sea jolts with a burst of energy from below, sending a single long ripple across the surface, a wave without a rhythm, a breath without lungs. You remember how sailors once crossed the oceans by reading the wind and water together. Trade winds, ocean currents, star maps, all part of a dance between sky and sea. But now, the sea has lost its tempo. A ship today would drift or stall. It could float for weeks without direction, guided only by uneven waves and random weather. Navigation would be possible, but slow, strange, frustrating. The ocean, once a moving road, becomes a still expanse. Fishermen notice the changes too. In places where upwelling once brought cold, nutrient-rich water to the surface, life begins to thin. Fish migrate oddly. Plankton blooms appear in places where nothing can eat them. The great food webs, fragile, balanced, ancient, begin to fray. You kneel and touch the water. It's warm, warmer than you expect. Your fingers feel the difference. Before, the sea cooled you instantly. Now it feels like it has been holding sunlight too long. It no longer shares its warmth. It hoards it. And that warmth is spreading slowly, unevenly, in ways you cannot predict. You wonder how long the oceans can remain out of rhythm before they become something else. They are not dead, not yet, but they are changing. And change, in a system this vast, is rarely gentle. You imagine the great deep currents, the thermohaline circulation, still moving in the black depths, far below the surface. These slow rivers of water, driven by salt and temperature, may carry on for a time, unbothered by the stillness above. But even they, in time, may slow, for they, too, relied on the rotation to shape their path. Without it, their journey becomes less certain, and you, a small figure beside the sea, feel the weight of this new stillness. It is not just the absence of wind or tide. It is the loss of memory. The earth remembers how to spin. The oceans remember how to move, but without motion to guide them, that memory fades. You close your eyes and listen. Somewhere far out, a distant wave crashes against rock. It is not followed by another, just one, then silence. And in that silence, You begin to wonder, if the oceans have lost their rhythm, what happens when heat and cold stop taking turns? You rise with the light, but it is not morning. It is simply the same light that has been shining for days or perhaps weeks, depending on where you are. The sun, unmoving in the sky, casts its gaze on the same land hour after hour. It is no longer a traveller. It is a torch left burning too long in one direction. On this side of the Earth, the sun has not set since the planet stopped spinning. The heat is slow, not like fire, but like pressure. Each day adds a layer. Soil that once cooled overnight now holds warmth longer and longer. Buildings never have a chance to rest in shade. Their surfaces absorb light and radiate it back. Concrete grows hot enough to soften rubber. Forests begin to wither at the tips. Even the air, once refreshed by wind, feels stale and trapped. You walk across open land. The grass has yellowed. It doesn't sway. There is no breeze to relieve it, no dew to soften its edges. Without rotation, the Earth's weather system has fractured. There are no trade winds, no spinning storms, no reliable patterns of heat exchange. Warm air gathers and stays. The atmosphere begins to stratify, and as you walk, you can feel it. Your skin cooks on one side and sweats without relief. You find shade where you can, but even shadows feel like illusions. Hot air clings to them too. Some animals try to adapt. You spot birds nesting underground, in burrows once reserved for cooler months. Foxes sleep beneath overturned logs. Most creatures have begun to shift their activity to the narrow hours of early dawn and late dusk, except now. There is no dawn, no dusk, only light, always. And light without rest becomes a burden. The plants tell the story best. Leaves curl inward. Vines retreat into their own roots. Trees begin to shed bark to protect their cores. Without night, there is no photosynthetic rhythm. Some plants overproduce energy and burn themselves out. Others pause, confused by the lack of darkness. You kneel beside a sunflower and see it facing the sun, unmoved, but even it seems tired, as if too much of a good thing has left it hollow. You travel toward what was once the equator, where the sun now hovers permanently overhead. This is the scorch line, the zone of direct exposure, where sunlight hits with relentless force. The ground here cracks in long, dry patterns. Rivers shrink, lakes evaporate. The soil glitters with salt where water once flowed. Without rotation to distribute heat, the sun's energy piles up on this side of the world like layers of cloth pressed into your chest. The clouds, too, respond to this change. Moisture evaporates from the oceans, but rises into skies that no longer circulate. Storms begin to form slow, heavy, and strangely still. Without spinning winds to guide them, they hover in place. Giant thunderheads build above overheated seas, thick with water but unwilling to move. Eventually, they collapse in sudden, terrifying downpours. Flash floods where no warning comes. Drought 1 hour, deluge the next. And then there is the other side of the earth, the side you cannot see from where you stand, but which your thoughts often drift toward. On the dark side of the planet, there is no heat, no sun, no relief. The night there is eternal. What began as coolness has deepened into cold, a cold that seeps into stone, into skin, into silence. Temperatures plummet well below freezing and do not rise. Without the spin of Earth to carry sunlight across the sky, this side is cast in unbroken shadow. You imagine walking there beneath a sky filled with stars that do not move. The moon rises and sets, pulled by its orbit, but the stars remain still. The cold is not sharp, but endless. It does not bite. It surrounds, it fills. Water freezes in pipes. Breath turns solid in the air. Soil becomes glassy and brittle. Buildings creak from contraction. The sound of a falling branch echoes like a gunshot in the stillness. In that darkness, life becomes rare. Animals hibernate, but not in the way they once did. It is not a season anymore. It is a permanence. Some migrate toward the twilight zone, the soft band between extremes. Others adapt by retreating underground, deep into geothermal warmth or abandoned subway tunnels. You imagine rats, raccoons, owls, all sheltering in silence, eyes adjusted to darkness, moving only when they must. Even plants try. Certain mosses curl into protective balls. Some seeds bury themselves deeper in search of preserved warmth. But most life that once thrived under sunlit days and starlit nights cannot endure the absence of both. The night is not just dark, it is directionless. And between these two worlds, the scorched and the frozen, lies a narrow band of compromise. A twilight ring. It stretches like a belt across the planet, where the edge of day meets the edge of night. Here the sun always hovers near the horizon, casting long shadows and a constant amber glow. It is neither too hot nor too cold, a permanent sunset, or sunrise, or both. You imagine standing there in the twilight zone, where light is always soft, and winds are slow but present. It is here that new weather forms uncertain, delicate, constantly adjusting. The balance is thin, easily broken. Too many clouds and cold seeps in. Too little moisture and heat begins to creep. But for now, this is where life might begin again. Settlements begin to form along the twilight ring. Cities realign their centres. Roads curve to follow the sun's fixed position. Crops are planted in long arcs rather than squares. People live with shadows that never change length, and time is measured by heartbeats rather than hours. Calendars shift, the old ways of marking seasons fade. Here, warmth and cold are in negotiation, not harmony, but truce. You think of the human body, how it once relied on circadian rhythms, light and dark guiding hormones and rest. In the scorched zone, people never sleep deeply. In the frozen, they sleep endlessly. But in the twilight, sleep becomes a rhythm of its own, untied to sun or moon. People learn to sleep in cycles not because of sky, but because of need. You walk along a ridge near the line between twilight and heat. You feel the difference with every step. One foot warm, the other cooler. Air from the scorched side pushes into the dusk, creating strange breezes that don't follow the old rules. You hear them, the soft stirring of wind, not born of rotation, but of pressure, of imbalance, of the earth trying to equalize itself in new ways. You pause, you place your hand on a rock that is warm on one side and cold on the other. It is the closest thing to balance this planet now knows. And yet you feel how fragile it is. You close your eyes and imagine what the oceans must be doing, now heating endlessly on one side, freezing on the other. Currents collapsing or strengthening in odd patterns. Waves moving not by rhythm, but by geography. Without rotation, the sea mirrors the land, stilled in places, surging in others. You wonder if the creatures of the deep have noticed. You wonder if they too migrate toward twilight. And you wonder quietly, not fearfully, what shape the earth will take now. Not just in temperature, but in rhythm, in memory, in the habits of wind and water and time. Because in a world where the sun no longer moves and night never ends, where can warmth go if not away? And where can cold retreat if not into the dark? You never expected to feel gravity change. It's not like wind or sunlight, not something you're taught to notice. It is simply there, always, beneath your feet. You drop a stone and it falls. You close your eyes and your body knows which way is down. But now, in the stillness of a planet that no longer spins, gravity begins to whisper its difference, not loudly, but persistently. It begins at your ankles. You feel it when you rise from a chair, when you stretch after sleep. A little more effort, a subtle pull. It's as if the ground has grown hungrier for your weight. You dismiss it at first, thinking it must be your imagination. But as days pass, the sensation deepens. Your feet press harder into the floor. Your legs tire more quickly. Something invisible is tugging you more firmly into the Earth's body. You stand in the center of a vast plain, land that once sat near the equator, where the Earth's rotation was fastest. Here, the surface used to bulge outward ever so slightly. Not enough to see, but enough to feel if you knew how to listen. That bulge wasn't a deformity. It was a balance, created by the centrifugal force of the Earth's spin. That outward push made you just a little lighter here than at the poles. Not much, maybe 0.5%, but your body noticed, even if your brain never did. Now, without that spin, the balance is gone. Gravity pulls downward, unopposed. The gentle outward lift that once countered your weight has vanished. The Earth doesn't push you away anymore. It holds you, fully. Not cruelly, but completely. You climb a low hill and feel the pull more keenly. It's not that the hill has grown steeper, it's that your body resists movement. Your knees protest the climb. Your breath shortens more quickly. You pause halfway up and rest your palms on your thighs, panting more than you should. The change is small, barely measurable by instruments, but to your bones, it is vast. You lie back on the slope and feel your spine settle into the earth. It's a different kind of comfort, heavier, as if the planet is holding you closer than before. The sky above doesn't turn, the air doesn't move, only the weight remains, constant and true. You think of astronauts who train in altered gravity. They learn how their bodies rely on downward force. Muscles grow weaker in space, where weight disappears. But here, on this unmoving Earth, the opposite begins to happen. Your muscles ache from doing the same things they always did. Your skeleton carries itself differently. Posture matters more. Every joint complains sooner. You visit a town that straddles what was once the equator. The people here speak of subtle changes, jars that now feel heavier, steps that take more effort, packages that strain shoulders more quickly. Nothing dramatic, just a shift, enough to notice, enough to change how long someone lingers before walking again. You speak with a farmer who says his oxen are slower now. He doesn't understand why. The plough feels heavier. The same work requires longer hours. The ground is holding us tighter, he says. You nod because you felt it too. It is not imagination. It is physics in motion, or the absence of motion revealing itself in the body. You begin to wonder about the shape of the Earth itself. For billions of years, the planet has not been a perfect sphere. It bulged slightly at the equator, a consequence of spinning. Like pizza dough flung in the air, rotation caused the middle to swell. Now, that motion has ceased, and Earth begins to relax into a more even shape. But the Earth is not soft clay. It resists change. The crust holds its old form, like a memory. And yet, slowly, subtly, things shift. Land begins to sink where it once bulged. The poles, less flattened now, start to rise. These changes are imperceptible day to day, but they will accumulate. Mountains might settle, valleys might fill, ocean levels may shift not from melting ice, but from the very reshaping of the planet's frame. You walk along a coastline where the sea now touches rocks that were once dry. The land has sagged just enough for water to seep closer. Not a flood, just a slow reach, like the sea is learning to walk in new shoes. And where the poles once pressed inward, glaciers creak and stretch upward, released from their old compression. Gravity has not changed in value, but it has changed in character. You visit a school where children are learning about weight and balance. Their teacher shows them scales and balls, drops feathers and coins. But when the children measure their own weight with digital scales, the results are not quite what the textbooks say. The numbers are slightly higher. It's the Earth hugging us harder, one child says, and you can't help but smile. A poetic truth hidden inside scientific change. You wonder how the Earth feels about this new stillness. If it were alive, would it notice the difference in its own skin? Would its molten core shift more freely, without the constant spin above it? Deep underground, the liquid iron that once swirled in currents might now settle, or stir in new directions. The loss of motion above may awaken different flows below, and that, in time, may affect more than gravity. It may change the very heart of the planet. You lie in bed that night, aware of your own weight, in a way you never were before. Your mattress feels firmer. Your hips sink deeper. You roll over with more effort. Sleep doesn't come easily. Not because you're uncomfortable, but because your body is still adjusting to what down means. You wonder if your dreams too feel heavier. In the days that follow, You hear stories from the polar regions. Where people once felt heavier, they now feel strangely light. Not because gravity has lessened, but because their bodies are not resisting that outward bulge anymore. Some say they sleep better, others say they float in water more easily. Scientists begin to study the migration of liquids, of magma, of the atmosphere itself, all shifting, ever so gently, in response to the new shape of the planet. And through all of it, gravity continues its quiet work, unchanged in essence, but transformed in experience. What was once uniform now reveals its subtleties. You realize that gravity was never one thing. It was always a conversation between mass and motion, between the earth and your body, between movement and stillness. You climb another hill, this time slower. Not because you are weak, but because you are aware. Your steps are deliberate. You feel each one in your calves, your spine, your shoulders. And when you reach the top, you look out over a land that is learning how to carry itself again. The trees below lean in the same direction, not from wind, but from growth. Roots adjust, foundations crack and are repaired. Everything heavy becomes heavier. Everything that flew now flutters with effort. Everything planted now grips more tightly. You place a stone at your feet and watch it sit, unmoved. But you truly know that it weighs more than it did weeks ago. Not by magic, not by myth, but because the earth no longer gives it that tiny invisible lift. And as you turn to leave the hill, you feel the shift again. Not just in your muscles, but in your mind. You begin to wonder, if gravity now holds us tighter, what happens to the skies that once floated above? The sky has always seemed eternal. From the ground you once looked up and saw movement, clouds drifting, jet trails dissolving into blue, birds circling in the layered air. But now, something has shifted. You feel it even when the sky looks calm. It's not just the absence of wind you notice, it's the absence of flow, of design, of rhythm. You lie on your back and gaze upward. The clouds are there, but they are slow. Not lazy, confused. They hover as if waiting for a signal to move. You know what's missing. You've learned the name for it, the jet streams. Before the earth stopped spinning, the sky was stitched with ribbons of fast-moving air. These jet streams, narrow corridors high in the atmosphere, flowed from west to east, looping around the planet like threads on a spinning globe. They guided storms, divided climates, carried warmth and cold where they were needed. Planes followed them. Forecasts relied on them, but they depended on motion, on Earth's spin. Without rotation, those threads begin to unravel. In the upper atmosphere, where air once raced at hundreds of kilometers per hour, everything begins to slow. At first, the jet streams lose their strength, then their shape. The delicate bends and arcs that used to trace continents begin to collapse. Instead of flowing like rivers in the sky, they puddle, stall, curl into knots. You climb a small ridge to better watch the sky. From here, you can usually see the movement of layers cirrus high above, cumulus drifting across the middle altitudes. Today, they overlap in strange ways. Some clouds move quickly, others barely at all. A patch of sky holds a storm for hours, while another remains bone dry. The sky no longer knows where to send the weather. Meteorologists try to make sense of it. They speak of pressure zones that no longer rotate, of storms that don't move, of high-altitude air that once roamed freely, now trapped in place. Some weather patterns last for weeks without shifting. A city can bake under a heat dome that refuses to leave. Another can drown beneath a cloud that never drifts. You imagine yourself rising slowly, weightlessly, into that upper sky. The air thins, the temperature drops. Below, the ground grows quiet and distant. Around you, the atmosphere is neither wild nor calm. It is waiting. You float through a space that once hummed with energy, now hushed. Not empty, just directionless. The jet streams used to form along the boundaries between warm and cold air. With the earth turning, those boundaries moved, rippled, danced. Now the lines are sharper. The warm air stays warm. The cold air stays cold, and between them, The wind once born of their difference becomes unstable. You think of airplanes, how they once used the jet stream to fly faster, save fuel, stay steady. Now their journeys are slower, bumpier. Pilots report strange turbulence in places that used to be smooth. Some flights are rerouted, others are cancelled. The sky is no longer predictable. It's become patchwork, some areas soft, others violent. Even birds notice. Migratory flocks that once rode invisible currents now flap harder, lose their way, land in places too soon or too late. The air they trusted is no longer their ally. You read stories of seabirds falling from exhaustion, of butterflies scattered across deserts they weren't meant to cross. The sky has stopped guiding them. On the ground, the changes feel surreal. People speak of stuck weather, endless heat, unrelenting rain, seasons that no longer progress. A single cloud can cast shadow over a valley for days. A breeze may not come for weeks. The wind, when it does arrive, no longer behaves with elegance. It comes as gusts, sharp, erratic, like muscles spasming after long paralysis. You visit a city built on a plateau, once cooled by steady afternoon breezes. Now, the buildings trap heat like sealed jars. The sky above them holds still. Smog, once carried away by high-altitude winds, hangs low. The air smells thicker, tastes metallic. People breathe slower. They speak in shorter sentences, not because the air is gone, but because it no longer refreshes. You think about convection, how warm air rises and cool air sinks. That still happens. But now, without the Earth's spin to spread those currents across the globe, the effects are trapped. A column of rising heat forms a thermal bubble over dry land. A tower of sinking cold air builds over snow-covered forests. But these columns don't lean, don't drift, don't move. They rise and fall in place, repeating themselves like forgotten songs. And so the sky grows divided, not by clouds or stars, but by memory. One part remembers how to move, another forgets. One part clings to the old momentum, another becomes still. And between them, turbulence, unpredictable swirls. The wind becomes more local, more tribal. One valley grows still, while the next valley howls. You lie awake one night listening for the wind. It used to speak through the trees outside your window, a lullaby, a warning, a story. Now, the silence is so deep, you can hear your own heart echo off the walls. When a breeze finally arrives, it feels strange, as if it doesn't belong. It touches your skin like a stranger, unsure whether to stay. You dream of flying, of drifting through cloud layers, your hands grazing vapour. But in the dream, the sky pushes back, not with strength, but with confusion. It cannot hold you. It does not know where to carry you. In some places, high-altitude clouds linger for days. Their shade becomes permanent. Crops fail beneath constant gloom. In others, the clouds vanish completely. Deserts stretch farther as the sun bears down unfiltered. The jet streams once carried moisture from sea to land. Now, much of that rainwater never arrives. Rivers dry at their source. The monsoons lose their pulse. And above it all, the atmosphere grows uneven. Without spin, the equator heats and holds its heat. The poles cool and trap their cold. The air in between doesn't know which way to go. It no longer arcs. It no longer dances. It drifts. You picture Earth's atmosphere like a glass of water once stirred, swirling, blending, circling itself. Now the spoon has been taken away, and the swirls begin to fade. You walk beneath a sky filled with contradictions. One cloud rains, while another shines. One gust lifts a child's kite, while 10 steps away, the air lies flat. You feel like you're living under separate skies stitched together by chance. Scientists study the upper air with instruments and satellites. They report back strange eddies, looping systems, patches of air that rotate the wrong way. They call it instability. You call it forgetting, because what once flowed with purpose now wanders. What once spiraled now stutters. What once rushed now hesitates. And you wonder, if the sky has ceased to flow, then how long before time itself forgets which way to move? You wake, but you cannot call it morning. There is no sunrise, no gentle brightening of the sky. The light outside your window is exactly what it was when you fell asleep, a static golden hush that presses through the glass. You reach for the clock. It tells you a time, but you don't feel it. The numbers count forward, as they always have. But time in this new world has forgotten how to mean. You sit up slowly. Your muscles stretch. Your mind tries to reorient. But there are no cues. No sunbeam reaching across the room. No bird song or shifting shadow. Your internal compass spins in place, unable to anchor itself. You are not lost, but you are unmoored. The earth no longer spins, the sun stays fixed in the sky, perpetual day in one place, endless night in another. Once the turning of the planet gave time its structure, day into night, light into darkness, hour into hour. Now those transitions have vanished. Time still passes, but it does not flow, it drips. You step outside into the unmoving light. You glance at your neighbours. Some are just waking. Others are already eating lunch. A few still haven't gone to sleep. The day has become unanchored from behaviour. People live on schedules now, defined by their own needs or the quiet rules of their new communities. Someone has painted a sun on the side of a building, marking where its light first touched the wall each day. But even that line doesn't move anymore. It has become a symbol, not a measure. You check your watch again. It's only been 10 minutes, but you feel as if you've lived an hour. Not because more has happened, but because your body is searching for something that isn't coming. A change in light, a cooling breeze, a tilt of shadow. All the things you once used to feel time now remain frozen. Children ask what time it is. Parents glance at the sky, then at their devices, then say, "It's about time for rest," or "Let's eat again." School schedules drift. Work cycles bend. Sleep becomes unpredictable. Some sleep in segments, 3 hours at a time, waking to read or walk before sleeping again. Others resist rest entirely, too alert in the never-shifting light. Time has become less a line, more a mist. In the cities, clocks still tick on walls. Digital faces still blink at intersections. Alarms still ring. But fewer people believe in them. Without the rotation of the earth, time feels arbitrary. You can measure it, but you cannot feel it. It doesn't breathe anymore. It just marches without rhythm. You speak with an elder who once rose with the sun and slept with its setting. He shakes his head now. "I can't feel the day," he says. "It used to live in my skin. Now it just disappears." He naps often, not from age but from disorientation. His body remembers the cadence of time, but the world no longer matches it. You wonder how much of human history was shaped by the turning earth. Rituals built around dawn, songs about midnight, the very concept of soon tied to the arc of the sun. Without that arc, words begin to lose their edges. Later stretches too far, now becomes slippery, tomorrow becomes theoretical. You walk to the edge of town, where someone has set up a series of candles. They light one each time they eat. When all are lit, they blow them out and sleep. A simple way to measure a day. You watch them, and it feels like a kind of worship, not of light or flame, but of passage. A personal rhythm in a world that has lost its own. You try it yourself. You keep a journal. You mark each meal, each walk, each nap. You write "woke up" even though you're not sure when or why. You write "rested" even if you didn't sleep. Slowly, you build a new kind of time, not measured by sun or moon, but by memory and meaning. You think of ancient humans who lived before clocks, before calendars. How they must have felt time in their blood, a ripple of light across water, the cooling of the air, the soft silence before dawn. They did not count seconds, they counted signals. And now, with those signals gone, you must learn to count differently. In the darker half of the world, the problem is stranger. Night does not lift. Shadows do not move. People live by artificial light lamps, lanterns, fires that flicker, not in celebration, but necessity. Circadian rhythms falter, melatonin floods the body, sleep comes too easily and stays. Depression settles in. Days pass without distinction. In some regions, time is kept by mechanical means alone. Giant clocks ring in public squares. Sirens announce meal times, but the people below do not live by those rings. They walk slowly, speak less. Their dreams grow long and vivid. Some describe feeling like they're always floating, not in space, but in between. You climb a hillside where a researcher has placed a sundial, long obsolete now. It casts a shadow, but the shadow does not move. It's become a sculpture, he says, a reminder of what time used to look like. You sit beside it, and for a while, you try to remember how it felt to watch the sun climb across the sky. The gentle change of tone, the way clouds would change colour, how that colour told you what to do next. You realise that the brain craves motion, not just in space, but in time. Without it, everything flattens. Emotion becomes less sharp. Events become less ordered. Did that happen today or yesterday? Becomes a question you ask yourself often. Some try to invent new ways of measuring time. One group sets up musical chimes that sound every 90 minutes, based on heartbeats. Another tracks the growth of a vine curling along a rope. A city paints its walls with a chemical that changes colour slowly when exposed to light, not because the light changes, but because time must be made visible somehow. You begin to notice how people's faces change. They age, but strangely. Without the cues of time, they seem to transform faster and slower at once. A child looks taller one day, then unchanged for weeks. An old woman looks ageless in the unmoving sun. The mirror becomes unreliable. And yet time does pass, food spoils, hair grows, seasons try to happen. The earth still orbits the sun, just no longer spins beneath it. In a way, the year remains, but the day is gone. You sit at a window and watch nothing move. A cat sleeps in a puddle of sun that never shifts. A bird perches, head tilted, waiting for a change that doesn't come. Somewhere, the moon continues its slow arc, but it too becomes a strange traveller circling a planet that won't turn to greet it. In this world without spin, time becomes internal. You mark your life by your own pulses, meals, thoughts, conversations, moments of silence. You become your own sundial, your own clock tower. You feel the minutes, not in movement, but in meaning, and you begin to wonder. If time no longer follows the sky, what does it follow now? The surface is still, but your bones know better. Something beneath is not. You kneel and place your hand on the ground. There is no tremor, no obvious shift, and yet you feel it. A hum that doesn't come from wind or air or sky. A slow, deep vibration, not constant, not loud, but present. The earth is speaking in a new language, one made of weight, pressure, and memory. For as long as there's been land, the outer shell of the planet, the crust has floated on softer rock, called the mantle. It moves in huge puzzle pieces called tectonic plates. They slide, collide, and slip past one another. Earthquakes, volcanoes, mountains, they're all born from this constant shifting. And while the crust has never depended on Earth's spin to exist, the rotation did help shape how stress was distributed. Now that spin is gone, and the weight of that absence presses down. The Earth used to bulge at the equator, a soft, slow swelling, caused by centrifugal force, the outward pull of rotation. It was just a few kilometres of difference, hardly noticeable, but it kept everything land, sea, pressure spread outward in balance. Without that bulge, the planet begins to settle. And settling, for a world made of rock, is rarely peaceful. You walk through a quiet meadow that once lay near a tectonic boundary. The grass is soft, the trees are calm, but the earth below has grown uncertain. Pressure that was once evenly spread now seeks new routes. Mountains press harder against their roots. Valleys sink a little deeper. The crust shrinks in some places and lifts in others. It is not visible to the eye, but it's there, beneath. In cities, seismometers pick up low-frequency tremors. They aren't earthquakes, not yet, but they are signals. Groans, adjustments. the slow reshuffling of rock under changing weight. Where the equator loses its bulge, continental shelves creak and tilt. Where the poles release their old flattening, buried ice expands its grip. Glaciers stretch downward into seas rising not just from melt, but from the very shift of Earth's skin. You visit a place once known for its seismic quiet, a region far from fault lines. But even here, the ground feels different. Engineers inspect bridges and notice hairline cracks in unexpected places. Roads buckle slightly. Foundations settle oddly. Not rapidly, just enough to show that the crust is breathing in a way it hasn't before. Deep underground, the mantle adjusts too. This layer, made of slow-flowing rock, is sensitive to pressure. It was once stirred subtly by the Coriolis force, twisted by the planet's spin. Now, those flows begin to drift. Currents grow confused. Hotspots beneath volcanoes shift position. Some begin to awaken, others fall dormant. The rhythm of magma, always slow, always ancient, starts to skip a beat. You think of volcanoes, sleeping giants, whose hearts are deep and slow. Some may awaken in places that once felt safe. Others may slumber longer than expected. Without the usual convective nudges from Earth's turning, the patterns of heat and uplift change. Lava waits longer to rise. Gases collect more heavily. When eruptions come, they may be more sudden, more powerful, not more frequent, just different. You sit on a rocky outcrop, listening. The air is still, the surface silent. But beneath you, the Earth has begun a long conversation with itself. The tectonic plates do not race or jolt. They drift, hesitate, recalculate, like dancers unsure without music. Some boundaries press closer together. Others relax. The loss of centrifugal balance causes them to respond, not violently, but thoughtfully, as if remembering how to carry their own weight. Somewhere, a fault line reawakens. For years it was locked pressure building along its edges. Without rotation to distribute that stress laterally, it no longer waits. A single sharp quake rattles a coastline. The sea withdraws slightly, then returns. People notice, but they do not yet understand that the crust is no longer guided by its old cues. You visit a cave system and walk deep inside. The air cools, the light fades. The rock around you is millions of years old, formed by compression, melted by time, folded by the great slow movements of Earth's history. You place your hand against the wall. It is cold, but it holds heat deep within. Somewhere beyond, the planet is adjusting. You can't see it, but you feel the echo. A resonance, like a note sustained without sound. Above ground, geologists take new readings. Gravity sensors detect minute shifts. Land is deforming, not breaking, but warping. Entire continents are experiencing micro uplifts and collapses, each no more than centimeters per year. But over time, such changes redraw coastlines. Lakes drain, hills rise, rivers shift course, and with every shift comes echo. Not sound, not always, but energy. Vibrations that travel through stone. Low, long waves called seismic hums ripple across the globe. Once rare, now more frequent. The Earth speaks through these waves. Some call them whispers, others call them songs. You just listen. You walk through a mountain pass where ancient rocks lean like sleeping giants. You imagine the pressure inside them, molecules adjusting, crystal structures responding to stress. You wonder how long before the mountain leans just a little more, not as disaster, but as correction. Scientists begin mapping the deep mantle differently. They speak of plume drift, of slab rollback, of stagnation zones shifting. These terms don't mean much to most, but they mean that the Earth's internal balance is rewriting itself. What was once nudged along by rotation now moves of its own weight. In some regions, geothermal vents weaken. In others, they grow hotter. Steam rises in strange places. Hot springs cool or vanish entirely. Underground reservoirs change shape. The heat below is finding new paths. It no longer answers to surface motion. It chooses its own. You pause one evening at the edge of a canyon. You toss a small rock into the dark and listen as it skips and tumbles. The echo takes longer to return than you remember. You wonder if the shape of the walls has changed, if the angles have shifted slightly. You sit and try again. Another rock, another echo, slightly off. It could be your imagination, but you believe in echoes now. The planet's crust is not cracking apart. It is reshaping under your feet, slowly, deliberately. It is the process of settling after eons of momentum, like a ship drifting to rest after a long voyage. The noise is low, the pain is slow, but the transformation is absolute. You learn to read the landscape differently, not by what grows, but by what leans, not by what stands, but by what shifts. Buildings must be built more flexibly now. Roads need joints that stretch. Foundations must move with the crust, not against it. And still, the ground hums. At night, in the quietest moments, you lie in bed and feel a presence beneath you. Not threat, not fear, just awareness. The realization that the earth you sleep upon is alive not in the way we once imagined, with myth and magic, but in structure, breath and shift. It no longer spins, but it still moves, and you begin to wonder, if the ground below has changed its rhythm, how will the creatures who rely on its pulse find their way across the sky? You sit on a hill and watch the sky. It's quiet, too quiet. There are no flocks cutting across the horizon, no distant cries trailing behind wings in motion. You wait for the usual signs, the arc of geese, the soft pulse of wings in V formation, the flicker of migration drawn on the air like script. But the sky stays still as the earth below it. Birds have always followed invisible maps not drawn by human hands, but by the rotation of the planet. The rising and setting sun, the shift of stars, the twist of wind against feather, the subtle pull of magnetic fields, all woven together into a compass their bodies could read. Now, that compass spins without direction. You walk toward a grove where sparrows used to nest. Their songs still rise occasionally, but they sound uncertain, less rhythmic, more sparse. The birds hop between branches, but they no longer leave. The instinct to travel, to move with seasons, has been dulled. Without rotation, seasons themselves are strange. Without a sun that moves, the cue to begin a journey never arrives. One day, you find a hawk circling above you, alone. It turns in widening loops, as if searching for a current of air that no longer forms. You watch its wings tilt and correct again and again. The wind is erratic now, and the sky no longer offers the silent hand it once did. After some time, the hawk glides downward and lands awkwardly on a boulder. Its wings tuck in, but its head turns constantly left, right, left, trying to understand what changed. Not all animals rely on the sky, but many do in ways we still don't fully grasp. Monarch butterflies once crossed thousands of kilometers, guided by sun position and magnetic drift. Now, their flights are fractured. You walk through a meadow where they once passed in orange clouds. Instead, you find a few fluttering low, pausing often, turning in circles, landing without purpose. Their journey has become guesswork. In the sea, it's no different. Whales once migrated by listening to the earth's hum, by feeling subtle changes in current and magnetism. Now, their paths bend strangely. Some head toward warm water and never return. Others gather in places where food no longer comes. Pods call out more frequently, and louder long songs echoing in confusion. Scientists hear them and record the patterns. They describe them as disoriented. You describe them as lost. You read of turtles that hatch on beaches and head toward the brightest part of the horizon once, the ocean glinting with moonlight. Now, with the moon's rhythm unbalanced and the stars unmoving above, many head the wrong way, into roads, into walls, into silence. Beaches that once teemed with hatchlings become graveyards of misdirection. Even the smallest creatures suffer. Bees, whose dance once pointed fellow workers to flowers based on sun angle, now forget the choreography. Without a moving sun, the angle is constant and meaningless. Some bees still fly out, some return, but many do not. Hives grow quieter. gardens bloom untouched. At night, bats emerge into a darkness that no longer changes. They navigate with sound. Yes, echolocation works in still air. But the insects they feed on are confused by the lack of daily rhythm. Some hatch too early, others vanish. The bats' paths grow longer. You see them circling lamplight, more out of habit than success. You begin to walk with your head tilted upward, scanning the sky not for beauty, but for absence. You don't realize it at first, but your ears are listening, too, for chirps, songs, buzzes. The orchestra of animal life that once marked dawn and dusk has grown thin. A single call, where once there were dozens. A broken harmony. In the oceans, jellyfish begin to swarm. In unusual places, their drifting used to be passive, shaped by currents, temperature gradients, tides. Now, those tides are strange. Some regions see massive blooms, others are empty. You stand on a shoreline where the water is too warm and the jellyfish float too close. No predators follow, just the soft pulse of translucent bodies in still water. You wonder if the animals know something you don't, if their disorientation is the first sign of a larger unraveling. They have always moved in ways humans barely understood, and now that the earth no longer spins, their ancient scripts have gone blank. You sit in a field and try to imagine what it's like to feel the need to move, but not know where to go. To be built for motion, but have the world's cues removed. Some animals stop moving entirely. Some move endlessly, in loops, a kind of sleepwalking. Migration becomes wandering. Mating becomes mistimed. Nesting becomes misplaced. You pass a wetland where frogs once called in loud synchronized croaks. Now, their calls are out of step. One here. A pause, another far away. The sound lacks center. The rhythm is broken. You crouch by the water and see a few clusters of eggs, but fewer than before. You wonder how long they can adapt, or if they will simply wait as if the world might spin again tomorrow. You visit a bird sanctuary, once alive with noise. The volunteers do their best. They feed, they monitor, they log sightings. But the logs have changed. Species arrive late or never. Some return in the wrong numbers. Some nest twice, others not at all. One caretaker tells you they look confused, like they're asking the sky questions that no longer have answers. You return home and listen to your own body. You realize how many of your rhythms were learned from the same earth. The animals now struggle to understand. You feel hunger at odd hours. You forget what day it is. You sleep too long, or not at all. You too are an animal that has lost its sky. In some places, new patterns begin. Animals that once lived apart now overlap. Arctic foxes wander south. Coastal birds build nests far inland. Some species adapt quickly, forging paths that no longer rely on sun or stars, but these are the exceptions. Most cling to a memory of rhythm, waiting for cues that never arrive. You lie down under the stars one night, or what you still call night, though it never changes. The stars no longer arc. They simply exist. You remember how sailors once used them to cross oceans, how migrating birds read their tilt and spread. Now they are a ceiling without direction. A single owl calls from the tree line. Then nothing. You listen harder. You hope for a reply, another call, a rustle, a sign of presence. But the silence stretches, and you begin to wonder, if the sky no longer leads, where do the rest of us go? Your body doesn't believe what your eyes are telling it. You wake from sleep and stretch beneath light that never faded. You rub your eyes and search for signs, a longer shadow, a brighter patch on the floor, the rustling of branches in a changing wind. But there's nothing. The light is the same. The air is still. You slept through the same moment you woke into. Your muscles feel sore in unfamiliar places, not from movement, but from confusion. You move your head side to side, trying to shake it away. You stand, yawn, blink at the clock. It tells you it's morning, but morning has no anchor anymore. For thousands of years, your body has depended on rhythm. Inside your brain, in a small pocket called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, is your master clock, a tiny timekeeper wired to light, motion and temperature. It once ruled your circadian rhythm, when to sleep, when to rise, when to feel hungry, or tired, or alive, and it did so with near-perfect trust in the sky. But now, Earth no longer turns, the sun no longer moves, and your inner clock no longer hears the cues it once knew. At first it was only small things, a delay in sleepiness, a late hunger. You would stay awake longer than usual, not tired, just drifting, or you would feel sleepy in the middle of what the clock claimed was mid-afternoon. Your body didn't argue, it simply began to slide slowly, out of sync. After a few days you began to forget how many hours had passed. The light outside never shifted, the temperature hovered, the silence deepened, and in that sameness your body started guessing, and guessing wrong. You meet others who feel it too. One neighbour eats breakfast at midnight, another drinks coffee at dusk. Someone else naps in 5-hour loops, no longer distinguishing between day and night. And none of them are wrong, because in this new world, there is no right time anymore. Doctors try to explain it. They say melatonin, the hormone that tells your body to sleep, now surges at the wrong hour, or fails to surge at all. Cortisol, which keeps you alert, fires unevenly. Body temperature doesn't dip when it should. Your core rhythm, once synced to light and dark, now floats in free space. You try to fix it. You install artificial dawn lights, designed to brighten slowly and fade at scheduled times. You wear blue light glasses. You take melatonin pills. You set alarms and timers. But your body resists. It isn't technology that set your rhythm, it was the earth itself. You go for a walk. The sun hasn't moved from its place in the sky. You wear sunglasses even though it feels like evening. The light is constant, but your pupils still widen and shrink as if expecting change. Your skin sweats without cause, then chills suddenly. The thermostat in your brain, once guided by diurnal rhythm, begins to forget what hour it thinks it is. You sit on a bench and watch people pass. Their faces tell the story. Some look freshly woken, their movements slow and blinking. Others seem alert but unfocused, like they've been awake too long. A child cries not from hunger, but from exhaustion his body can't name. A teenager yawns through a conversation. A woman stares at her phone for minutes without tapping it. Everyone is here. No one is quite present. Inside the body, things begin to drift. Digestion slows, hormones lose their usual cadence. Insulin becomes unpredictable. People gain weight not from eating more, but from timing lost meals taken at odd intervals. Metabolism stalled. Some complain of aches, others of anxiety. A restlessness without a reason. You learn about free-running sleep. In the absence of sunlight, the body tends to follow its own internal schedule, often longer than 24 hours. Some people stretch into 25 and 26-hour cycles. Others spiral into a fractured pattern. Sleep for 4 hours, wake for 2, sleep again. There are no sunrises to tether them, only the body, inventing rhythm where none exists. You begin to track your own patterns. You log sleep, food, temperature, mood. The graph makes no sense. One night you sleep 9 hours, the next only 3. You eat at noon one day, then not again until dawn. Your dreams grow strange, vivid, often unanchored in time. In one you see yourself walking beneath 3 suns. In another, you wake to find the sky missing entirely. You notice time passing in your hair. It grows longer. Your nails too. You still age, but aging without rhythm feels surreal. There is no this morning, no yesterday, only a string of waking hours blurring into one another. In hospitals, the disorientation becomes a concern. Recovery slows. Patients lose track of time between treatments. Nurses begin marking the passage of hours with coloured lights, trying to simulate the rise and fall of the day. It helps a little, but it's a simulation, and the body can tell. You speak with someone who used to work nights. She tells you it reminds her of that time, the confusion, the sense of always being half awake. But this is worse, because at least back then, the sun still rose for someone. Now it rises for no one. It simply remains. You return home and lie in bed. You don't know whether you're tired. You close your eyes, not expecting sleep, only rest, but your body, unsure, gives in because the darkness you create by closing your eyes is the only night it knows now. When you dream, it's long and slow. You're in a hallway where the lights never turn off. You move through rooms where clocks tick but have no hands. You hear birds calling in a forest where no shadows fall. You wake unsure how long you slept, but it doesn't matter, because the light through your window is still the same. Some begin to embrace the change. They abandon clocks. They live by sensation, eat when hungry, sleep when exhausted, wake when their eyes open. They describe it as natural, but it's not. It's adaptive. A body bent towards something that used to make sense, and now it simply floats. You walk again, this time to a hilltop. You sit in silence. You close your eyes and try to listen to your body, the beat of your heart, the stretch of your breath. You begin to feel time, not as a sequence, but as weight, a presence, not a path but a pool. Somewhere below you, clocks still tick, but they no longer match the rhythm in your chest. And you begin to wonder, if we are creatures of light and dark, what happens to us when there is only one? You stand at the edge of the land. The sea in front of you looks familiar, but the shoreline doesn't. It curves where it once was straight. A strip of sand that used to stretch wide is now a thin ribbon. The water laps at rock that's been dry for decades. The tide hasn't risen, it's the earth that's changed. For billions of years, Earth spun on its axis, completing one rotation every 24 hours. That spin created an outward force centrifugal strongest at the equator. The result was a gentle bulge, not dramatic, but enough to stretch the planet's middle outward by about 21 kilometers, giving Earth its familiar oblate shape, not a perfect sphere, but a slightly flattened ball. Now, with the spin gone, that outward force no longer holds. The bulge is beginning to settle, and with it, the very shape of the Earth is changing. You walk inland through a stretch of forest that once sloped gently. Now the angle feels different. The trail you remember curves more sharply. A river that ran beside it now cuts deeper, as if the land around it has quietly sunk. There was no earthquake, no sudden movement, just slow rearrangement, the skin of the planet shifting under the weight it used to carry outward. Near the former equator, the land is sagging first. It is subtle. Only satellites and careful instruments notice at first. But now, people begin to feel it in strange ways. Coastal towns report rising waters, not from melting glaciers, but from the earth relaxing its hold on the sea. Islands once flat now have soft hills. Plains sink millimetre by millimetre. You pass through a farming village. The locals mention how their wells take longer to fill. The groundwater seems deeper. Crops in low-lying fields drown more easily after rains. You walk past an old barn whose doors no longer close evenly. The foundation has tilted. The ground's getting soft, one man says, though he doesn't know why. In truth, the crust isn't softening, it's adjusting. The planet is slowly moving toward a new equilibrium, a more spherical one. It doesn't break, it bends, rocks compress. Sediments settle, mountain roots redistribute their load, and in doing so, the surface becomes something new, not foreign, just unfamiliar. At the poles, the opposite is happening. Where the crust was once compressed by Earth's flattening, it now begins to lift. Slowly, gradually, the polar regions are rebounding. You read reports of ancient ice fields cracking differently, not because of melt, but because the land beneath them is rising, ever so slightly, from the absence of compression. In one northern outpost, buildings have shifted on their pilings. Pipes run uphill, where they once lay flat. Researchers recalibrate their equipment daily. It's like living on something breathing, one says, but breathing in centuries. Geologists call it isostatic adjustment, the crust finding new balance after the removal of old pressure. But to those who live on it, it's less a concept than a quiet reality. Hills rise where they did not. Rivers find new paths. Gravity doesn't change, but what it acts upon does. The ocean too reshapes. Not by tide, not by storm, but by gravity responding to a different surface. With the equatorial bulge easing, the water once held there begins to flow outward, not violently, but persistently. Some shorelines flood, others recede. You walk along a dock that once met the water's edge. Now the boats sit higher, their ropes pulled taut. The sea beneath them is deeper. You visit a museum that used to sit on a fault line. In the lobby, a globe once turned slowly, a reminder of Earth's motion. Now it sits still. Beneath it, a plaque once read, "Our spinning home." Someone has scratched through the word spinning. The correction is quiet. No one speaks of it, but it says enough. Cartographers begin redrawing maps, not because of politics or population, but because the land itself is shifting. Coastlines inch inward, archipelagos fragment, river deltas collapse or expand. The satellite images come slowly, over years, but each tells the same story. The Earth is returning to a shape it hasn't held since before it ever spun. You speak with an architect designing buildings for this new world. She talks about foundations that flex, about drainage that adjusts. "We used to build for wind and weather," she says. "Now we build for gravity we forgot we had." In classrooms, children learn a new version of Earth's profile. The old bulge at the equator is still taught, but with a footnote. This is how it was. Diagrams show the slow return to spherical symmetry. The word symmetry sounds beautiful, but to people watching their homes shift, it feels more like loss, and yet the change is not always destructive. In some places, the uplift reveals what was hidden. In the highlands, a lake begins to drain, exposing stone that hasn't seen air in 1,000 years. Fossils emerge of trees, of fish, of ancient mammals that walked when the Earth was younger, before its spin settled into rhythm. Perhaps, you think, the planet is showing you something, a past now brought to light through pressure reversed. You walk a beach where tide pools used to form. Now the slope is wrong. Water gathers strangely, leaving creatures stranded or clustered. Shells dry where they shouldn't. Children build sandcastles farther inland. The sea feels confused, and maybe it is. It has known the contours of this world for ages. Now, those contours are changing. In the silence of night, you sit on a rock and press your hand to the ground. It feels solid, but you know it's moving. Not like before, not spinning beneath you, but curling inward, relaxing, becoming. The shape of the Earth was once defined by motion. Now it is defined by memory, the echo of spin left behind, slowly being erased by the weight of stillness. And you begin to wonder if the Earth no longer wears its old shape. How long before even the sky forgets how to curve? The first time your compass hesitates, you think it's broken. You tap it, rotate it, lift it to eye level. The needle still points somewhere, but not reliably. Not the way it used to. You try another compass, and then a digital one. They too seem unsure. The direction they offer shifts subtly, as if the world beneath your feet is reconsidering its answer. And in a way it is. The magnetic field that surrounds Earth has always been invisible. A shield, a guide, a whispering presence between the planet and the deep dark of space. You never saw it, but it was always there, protecting you. It was born in the core, deep beneath the crust, where molten iron churned and flowed in great loops, a geodynamo powered by heat and spin. The Earth's rotation stirred the molten metal into motion, and that motion created magnetism. But the spin is gone now, and the flow begins to change. At first, no one notices. The magnetic field doesn't vanish overnight. It lingers. It weakens in fractions. It shudders, reforms, tries to hold. But as the deep currents of the outer core settle, the dynamo inside the planet grows unstable. The lines of force that once looped from pole to pole begin to curl and bend. Some disconnect, others reverse. The magnetic field becomes untrustworthy. You speak with a navigator who once flew planes using magnetic bearings. "We had to switch to gyros," he says. "The compass started lying to us." In high altitudes, the deviation is more dramatic. Aircraft now rely more heavily on satellites and internal sensors. But even satellites begin to struggle. because the shield that once protected them is fraying. Earth's magnetosphere, the bubble of magnetic energy that deflects harmful solar radiation, begins to ripple. Solar particles, once smoothly deflected toward the poles, now find strange gaps. Some enter the upper atmosphere in places they shouldn't. Instruments in space detect the difference. Radiation levels rise. You lie outside one night staring at the sky, waiting for the auroras. They used to come in green waves, pink veils, shimmering curtains of light. But now they are weaker, less frequent, fading. In some places they stop appearing altogether. Not because the solar wind is gone, but because Earth no longer channels it in the same way. You walk to a place where the auroras once danced. Locals call it the dark sky, not because of clouds, but because the light never returned. Tourists still come, hoping to see something. Some wait for hours, staring upward in silence. Eventually they leave. The sky is quiet. Children once played with magnets on countertops and black sand on beaches, shaping tiny sculptures of force. Now those same toys behave oddly. The pull is softer. The invisible threads between materials no longer stretch the way they did. It's as if the world's magnetic soul is forgetting how to hold. You learn that birds and fish once used the magnetic field to migrate not just the stars, not just the sun, but Earth's very force. Tiny iron-rich crystals in their brains let them feel north, feel motion, feel return. Now those inner senses fail. You remember the flocks that no longer fly, the whales that no longer return. Perhaps they are lost in more ways than one. Geophysicists gather data. They speak of anomalies, areas where the field is weakening faster than expected. The South Atlantic, already home to a weak patch, grows thinner still. Satellites passing through lose signal. Some experience temporary failures. Others shut down early. The Earth's protection is becoming uneven. You visit a research station where scientists monitor the field. They show you maps, glowing bands of blue, red and yellow, shifting, spreading, fading. We think we're heading toward a reversal, one says, or maybe a collapse, hard to know. The poles wander, they always have, but now they drift without pattern. North is no longer a place, it is a probability. In labs, magnetic shielding becomes more important. Delicate instruments falter without it. Hospitals report minor glitches in imaging machines. Compasses used in drilling, mining and exploration lose precision. You begin to realize how much depended on this force you never saw. And yet the magnetic field was never still. It pulsed, changed, evolved over millennia. What makes this moment different is not just the change, it's the absence of spin. Without rotation to stir the core, the flows inside Earth slow. Some freeze, others form strange eddies. The field becomes lopsided, braided, ragged. You read about cosmic rays, high-energy particles from distant stars. Normally deflected, now they pierce deeper into the atmosphere. At high altitudes, airline crews receive increased exposure. Some flights change course. Radiation detectors grow more common in airports. In the high north, people begin limiting time outdoors on bright solar days. But to most, nothing seems different. The magnetic field was always unseen. Its disappearance is quiet. No sirens, no fires, just a soft retreat of what once held so much. You walk along a cliff and find an old compass embedded in a trail marker. It still spins, searching. The needle wavers slightly. The glass is cracked. You crouch and watch it, and for a moment it points true. Then it doesn't. You leave it alone. It is trying its best. In schools, children now learn about the magnetic field with new endings. They learn that it still exists, but that it is changing. That it once protected Earth's atmosphere, guided life, carved light across the poles. They learn about the deep iron currents and the dynamo of motion. But they also learn that motion can stop. And they ask what happens if the field disappears completely. The answer is we don't fully know. Without the magnetosphere, solar wind may strip the atmosphere slowly, molecule by molecule. Not in a year, not in a decade, but over centuries. Without the field, radiation may creep downward, not in fire, but in fractions. Not visible, but cumulative. You walk back home under a sky that has never looked so calm. The stars seem closer, brighter. Perhaps it's the thinner air, the clearer sky. Or perhaps it's the lack of shielding, the window that once filtered everything, now letting more starlight in. And you wonder if the earth feels bare now, not wounded, but exposed. Because the field that once wrapped it like a cloak, quiet, strong, unseen, is slipping away. And as you turn toward the horizon, you begin to wonder, if the world no longer shields us from the stars, where do we go to find cover? You stand at the edge of something neither day nor night. The light around you is soft, warm, and without direction. It does not rise. It does not fall. It simply stays poured across the landscape, like honey left still. This is the twilight ring, a narrow band that circles the earth, dividing the side locked in endless daylight from the side steeped in perpetual night. Here, the sun rests on the horizon forever, as if undecided, casting long shadows and orange glow across every surface. It is not bright, not dim, it is balanced. And in this balance, life clings on. The ring is thin, a few 100 kilometers wide in most places, sometimes more where terrain shapes the angle of light. On one side, heat builds and refuses to leave. On the other, cold deepens and never lifts. But here, in between, there is neither scalding sun nor icebound dark. The temperature holds at something survivable, not comfortable, but survivable. You feel it in your skin, a constant warmth without burn, a coolness without sting. The air moves gently, stirred not by Coriolis, forces those vanished with Earth's spin, but by simple difference. Warm air from the bright side presses toward the shadow. Cold air creeps in return. The result is a loop of motion, slow and persistent, that sustains the only wind left in the world, with purpose. You walk through a settlement built to follow the twilight. Roads curve with the ring. Buildings face sideways to the sun, never casting full shade, never fully lit. People here sleep in cycles unbound from any clock, guided by nothing but hunger, need, and the low thrum of shared fatigue. Crops are grown in wide arcs, carefully positioned to capture the eternal slant of sunlight. In greenhouses, tinted glass protects delicate plants from overexposure. Elsewhere, leafy vegetables grow wild, bending always toward a sun that never moves. Some species thrive here, as if the world had never spun mosses, ferns, fungi, their growth steady, unhurried. Animals roam carefully. Foxes, birds, even reindeer in some regions have migrated toward this zone, abandoning both the blinding light and the consuming dark. The twilight ring is not uniform. In some places, clouds gather endlessly, fed by moist air from the light side and cooled from the dark. In others, the sky is clear for weeks, painting the land in bronze light, so constant it no longer feels like sunlight at all. Shadows here are strange. They stretch sideways forever. They never flip, never grow, never retreat. You sit beside a wall and watch your own shadow hold its place like a memory that refuses to fade. Time does not pass here. In light it passes in change. The way plants lean, the way rust forms, the way people's faces learn to live without dawn or dusk. Children born in the twilight ring know no sunrise. Their first memories are of orange skies and low clouds. They speak of the light, not as morning or evening, but as always. Their drawings have no sun above, only beside. When they learn of what the world used to be spinning, tilting, waking into light, and sleeping into dark, they listen as if to stories from another planet. And in many ways, that's true. The earth they know is not the one their ancestors lived on. It is quieter, slower. It asks different things of those who live upon it. You visit a farm built on the ring's inner edge, where the temperature dips low at night, but not dangerously. The farmers here have learned to grow by rhythm, not of time, but of need. Crops are planted in circular plots. Animals graze in slow rotations. There is no clock to tell the cows when to return. To the barn, only their own sense of fullness, of rest, of shade. People rise when their bodies ask to move. They sleep when their eyes dim. It is not always efficient, but it works. Farther along the ring, cities adapt differently. They are designed in belts roads, curving to follow the twilight, with solar panels angled permanently toward the low sun. Artificial lights glow dimly inside, not to mimic the sky, but to distinguish spaces. Day and night have no meaning anymore. Instead, people speak of bright time and dim time, terms that reflect how one feels more than what one sees. Some shops stay open 20 hours, others close for 4, then open again. Sleep is personal, meals are fluid, the calendar remains only as ritual. You pass a clinic where doctors study the effects of twilight living. They say people here age differently, not faster, not slower, just differently. Skin weathers on one side more than the other. Sleep cycles stretch and bend. Hormonal rhythms, once tied to light and dark, adapt to nourishment, to temperature, to restfulness. Melatonin still flows, but less predictably. Cortisol still rises, but in flatter waves. The body, like the world, has learned to hold itself steady and in balance. Not everything thrives. Some struggle. Certain crops fail without rest from the sun. Others bolt too quickly. Migratory birds that stop here no longer know when to leave or why they should. They settle, but their flocks shrink each year. People too find limits. The unchanging light wears on some minds. You meet a woman who wears a blindfold when she walks, not because she is blind, but because she misses the contrast of shade and sun. I like to pretend the light is moving, she says softly, just for a little while. You camp one night in the open, watching the horizon. The sun hovers there, unmoving, but the colours change subtly, not from time but from air. Dust, clouds, wind, a golden hue 1 hour, a rust red the next. You find that change still exists, but it has become softer, less certain. Like everything else in this ring, it depends on things that don't follow rules anymore. In the east, the land stretches into brightness. You do not walk far that way. The air is warmer, thicker. The soil begins to crack. Insects disappear. The heat climbs with every step, and soon you must turn back. The land there is not yet dead, but it's no longer safe for long. In the west, the cold awaits. You take a few steps toward it and feel the bite. The wind grows sharper. Your breath fogs. Trees become brittle. Even the birds grow silent. You retreat again to the middle, to the place of balance. And that perhaps is the secret of the twilight ring. It is not a place of perfection. It is a place of compromise, a sliver of space where extremes meet and cancel each other just enough to allow life. Not thrive, not flourish, but survive. And survival in this new earth is something sacred. You sit one last time, watching the low sun cast gold across the field. A fox moves in the distance, its shadow long and thin. The grass sways gently. Someone nearby plays music, slow, stringed, the notes rising like breath. There is no rush, no alarm, no ending. And you wonder, if balance now lives only in this narrow ring, how long before it too begins to shift? Civilization, once a dance choreographed by the rotation of the earth, has begun to change its rhythm. Without the turning of the planet to pace time and organize space, humanity slowly learns to live by other rules. At first, the transformation is subtle streetlights, staying off longer, clocks drifting into irrelevance, morning routines untethered from the idea of morning. But as the days without spin stretch into years, cities begin to bend, structures reorient, entire ways of living shift. Civilization does not collapse, it mutates. In the unchanging daylight, cities shine constantly. Buildings cast the same shadows, hour after hour, year after year. Sun-facing walls bleach and crack, while shaded sides grow moss and mildew. Urban planners adapt by turning windows away from direct light, installing sun barriers that never need to retract, building courtyards in arcs rather than squares. Solar panels are fixed at perfect angles, no longer tracking the sun no longer moves. Some cities, scorched by unrelenting heat, migrate toward the twilight ring, slowly abandoning their historical centers for zones of perpetual dusk. New settlements rise with no need for street lamps. Artificial light becomes obsolete, where the sky never dims. On the dark side of the planet, humanity adapts differently. Cities operate underground or beneath domes of constant warmth. Here, the challenge is not avoiding heat, but preserving it. Energy, once spent battling the cold of winter, is now used to imitate a world lost to rotation. Artificial sunrises are programmed in luminous chambers. Plants are grown under timed LEDs. Streets are heated from below, and homes are wrapped in smart insulation. The people who live in this endless night learn to navigate by habit. They light their lives with rhythm instead of sun. Clocks still exist here, not because time is real in the old sense, but because people need something to agree on. Shift work continues, school sessions tick along in segments, but the idea of a day becomes increasingly arbitrary. Calendars begin to fade, with no sunrise to mark beginnings and no sunset to close chapters. Time becomes a matter of convenience. Weeks dissolve into blocks of activity. Some communities operate on 10-hour cycles, 5 hours of work, 5 of rest, repeated 3 times in what used to be 24 hours. Others stretch time out 48-hour days, with naps and meals scattered by preference. In more structured societies, bells or sirens mark the passing of civic time. A single note signals wake. Another calls pause. No one pretends these are tied to nature. They are simply the new scaffolding of shared life. Language evolves to match. Terms like noon, midnight, sunset, and dawn become poetic rather than practical. Children grow up hearing phrases like "back when the world turned" or "in the days of real mornings," as if describing myths. People speak instead of lightwood and shadowfall, of sky bright and grey bend. Directions change. Instead of east and west, there is sun front and sun back. Instead of night and day, there is bright side and dark side, constant and void. These are not scientific labels, they are survival terms. Religions adapt too. Some hold tightly to old calendars, lighting candles at fixed intervals to preserve memory. Others embrace the new reality, worshipping balance or permanence. One faith builds sanctuaries directly on the twilight ring, where services are held in the glowing half-light, neither day nor night. Another develops rituals for silence, an hour of stillness each cycle to honor the earth's lost motion. Pilgrimages are no longer measured in steps, but in heat or cold. A sacred path might be defined by a corridor of tolerable temperature, not by sunrise over mountains. Art changes as well. Painters abandon traditional landscapes and begin to explore the tension of motionless light. Music becomes longer, more repetitive, echoing the endless rhythms of the environment. Films are shot in natural light that never changes. Photographers wait not for golden hour, but for rare shifts in air quality or cloud drift to provide contrast. Dance, once bound to beats and crescendos, explores the art of stillness, of almost motion. A performance may last hours and seem barely to move a mirror of the planet itself. Technology leans into permanence. Solar collectors never rotate. Clocks are synced less frequently. Satellites orbit cautiously, programmed with new understandings of magnetism and drift. Long-term planning becomes truly long-term. Structures are built for centuries, not decades, with materials meant to resist the unchanging forces of static light or deep freeze. People design machines that work on compressed routines, farming bots that never sleep, cleaning bots that run forever under steady power. In some regions, massive environmental domes are constructed to simulate lost cycles, artificial rain, moving shadows, periodic winds. A whole industry rises to recreate movement. Education is overhauled. History lessons focus on the time before the spinning Earth, the 24-hour day, the movement of the stars. Science curricula now include new disciplines: solar edge engineering, twilight agriculture, static atmospheric modelling. Children are taught to navigate with new tools. Compasses are obsolete. Instead, direction is taught through the fixed position of the sun or the permanent angles of shadow. Students memorize not constellations, but the curve of cloud cover and the ring of auroral ghostlight that sometimes haunts the atmosphere. Social life, once shaped by the rhythms of nightfall and awakening, shifts inward. Meals happen on cycles chosen by communities. Dating patterns adjust evenings no longer exist, so romance becomes linked to quiet hours or shared breaks in a work block. Sleep schedules drift apart. Families learn to stagger time within households. One partner sleeps while another cooks. Children nap during parent meetings. Noise laws soften. People learn to live around each other's rhythms rather than within one. Even fashion changes. On the bright side, clothing becomes lighter, layered for breathability, designed to reflect light or cast personal shade. On the dark side, insulation is king materials that store warmth, fibers that shimmer faintly in artificial lighting. In the twilight ring, adaptive wear becomes common: tunics that darken in brightness, coats that vent in slow cycles, hats with side flaps to block permanent glare. Not all change is graceful. Some cities collapse under heat or neglect. Some governments fall when timekeeping systems fail. There are uprisings led by those who refuse artificial clocks. There are mass migrations toward the twilight ring, some orderly, others desperate. Borders shift, maps are redrawn. There is tension between those who adapt and those who remember, between the bright and the dim, between the spinning and the still. But even so, civilization endures. In the twilight ring, you visit a town designed like a spiral. It curls outward from a central plaza, following the soft arc of the sun. Homes closest to the plaza bask in a golden-orange glow. Farther out, the light fades. Each ring hosts different work: food, fabric, rest, music. People here do not live by clocks, but by position. Their place in the spiral tells them what to do. There are no walls, just a gentle curve into and out of brightness. You speak to a teacher who has never seen a sunrise. She says, "We tell the children about it. We describe how shadows used to crawl across the floor, how night came with a hush. They ask what it felt like, and we try to explain. But I think they understand it more like a story than a memory." You walk to the edge of town where the light begins to flatten, where crops no longer grow. A single sundial stands in a garden, casting a permanent line of shadow. It's not used anymore, but no one removes it. It's a monument not to what time is, but to what it once meant. And as you turn back toward the city, glowing faintly in the copper light, you begin to wonder, if this is how we live now in slow arcs and spirals of survival, what will remain when the earth stirs again? It starts as nothing. A silence inside a silence, not even a tremor. Just a sense felt, not heard, that something is preparing. You lie in the open, beneath a still sky, and you think you hear it. The earth, humming. Not loudly, not even softly, just faintly. A murmur below your feet, deeper than memory, slower than time. It might be imagination, but you hold your breath and feel it. The possibility that something ancient is waking. The planet has not spun for a long time. Generations have lived without motion. People have found ways to exist in a world that no longer turns. They've built cities wrapped in shadow, harvested food from soil that knows only one face of the sun. They've measured time by hunger, by habit, by the flowering of hardy plants, or the migrations of animals still stubborn enough to wander. The idea of movement of the world as a turning place has become a story. A beautiful one, yes, but also distant. And yet now something shifts. Slightly. Beneath the crust, beneath even the rock. Deep in the planet's core, currents have not entirely stopped. They slowed, yes, they drifted, but some still turn. Molten metal, pressured and confined, finds new paths. And in these hidden flows, momentum begins again, not enough to stir the surface, not yet, but enough to whisper a future. The geodynamo stirs, magnetic lines that once frayed begin to reweave. You learn this not from headlines, but from patterns. A compass needle wavers differently. Satellite readings show flickers of alignment. A scientist somewhere posts a paper titled Early Indicators of Rotational Resurgence. No one celebrates, it's too early, but quietly people begin to watch. In the twilight ring, where balance has held the longest, people are the first to feel it, not in buildings, not in machines, but in themselves. A farmer says her crops are flowering faster. A child says the sun looks a little bit moved. Most dismiss it, but some notice, and when enough notice, others begin to believe. Instruments confirm it, not rotation, exactly, but torsion, a fractional twist, a beginning of a beginning. You walk along a cliff and feel a breeze not from temperature difference, but from Coriolis drift. It's slight. A scientist would call it negligible, but it moves your hair, it stirs leaves, it shifts the way birds hover. You stand still for hours, watching shadows. At last, after weeks of vigilance, you see it, a shadow that shortens slightly, a line on a sundial that no longer holds its angle. You don't shout, you don't cry, you just sit there, heart thudding, watching the earth try to remember how to move. Not everyone welcomes this. For many, stillness has become life. Entire systems are built around it. Cities engineered for immobility, crops planted in curves, time structured in blocks of personal rhythm. The return of rotation would mean the return of morning and evening, but also the return of unpredictability. Weather would shift again, winds would stir, clocks would need recalibration, cultures would need to remember old ways or invent new hybrids. There is resistance, there is fear, but there is also wonder. Children born in the stillness are told, "You may one day see a sunrise," and they believe it, not as fact, but as hope. Some build towers to watch the horizon, others draw the sun in motion, imagining its path. In art, the return of spin becomes a theme. Spirals, circles, turning hands. Songs mimic waves, poems speak of tilting skies. The dream of rotation returns, before the fact of it does. Years pass, and slowly, with the delicacy of a breath held too long, the earth begins to move again. One full rotation might take a month, then 20 days, then 10. The motion is not smooth, it wobbles, the axis is unsure, but it continues. A second sunrise appears on the bright side, strange, elongated, slow. People wake and blink into its light, confused. Some weep, some cover their eyes, but most stare. They are watching history reverse. In places that once knew only day, shadows now lengthen. Walls once bleached, by sun now host dusk. People gather to feel night fall for the first time in their lives. It's not cold not yet, but it's dim. Stars appear, not as legends, but as fact. On the dark side, the opposite occurs. Darkness cracks open, light spills in. Sunlight touches streets where no green has grown in generations. There are cheers, there are songs. People step outside and lift their faces. All around the world, the concept of time returns. Not because clocks demand it, but because light does. Morning, noon, evening, night, these were once abstractions, then dreams. Now they are real again. Slowly, old words find new voices. Calendars are printed once more. Days are named. Shadows become the hands of time. But this new earth is not the same as the old. It rotates more slowly. A day is not 24 hours, but 40, then 32, then 28. The spin stabilizes only gradually. Cultures adjust. Some countries adopt new time standards. Others keep the rhythms of stillness for practicality. But even those who cling to the old ways notice that things are changing. Crops need to be planted in rows again, not arcs. Buildings must brace against wind. Transportation must consider jet streams returning to form. humanity becomes something between what it was and what it learned to be. The best of both. Old knowledge is revived: sun tracking, shadow reading, star navigation, but it is merged with the wisdom of stillness, patience, balance, life without rush. Civilization doesn't forget, it integrates. A city on the twilight ring installs rotating mirrors to maintain its gentle glow, even as true day and night return. Artists record the first full sunrise as seen from the eastern sea. A new calendar is born, marked from the day of the first complete Earth turn. And you, standing on the edge of this world, feel something in your chest, a recognition, a heartbeat that finally matches the pulse of the planet. You walk at dusk, watching the sun dip low, and you remember when it never moved. You remember how you learned to live without it, how stillness became story, how silence became survival. But now, with each slow turn of the world, you feel your body rediscover something ancestral, a rhythm not invented but remembered. On the night of the first equinox, when half the world turns into shadow and half remains light, a festival is held. Not everywhere, but in enough places that songs echo across valleys and cities at once. Fires are lit, bells are rung. People dance not in circles, but in spirals, honouring both the spin that was and the stillness that sustained them. Children are told the full story, and for the first time in centuries, it feels whole. And as you close your eyes that night, a gentle wind brushing your face, you wonder, if the earth has remembered how to turn, what else, hidden in time, might it someday remember again?